The phone hit the dashboard so hard the screen cracked into a spiderweb of broken glass. Marcus Hale didn't even look at it. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white, and the only sound in the car was his own ragged breathing cutting through the silence like a serrated knife. Outside, the city lights blurred past, turning into long streaks of gold and red that looked like wounds bleeding across the night sky. He had built those lights, in a way. His money had funded half the construction projects that made this skyline what it was. His name was on buildings, on charity wings, on university halls. Marcus Hale, the man who turned nothing into billions, the genius who saw opportunities where others saw obstacles, the philanthropist who gave back to the community that raised him. That man was a lie. Or maybe that man was dead. Marcus couldn't tell anymore. All he knew was that the person driving this car, this hollow shell with a racing heart and a mind full of static, was someone he didn't recognize. Someone who had just walked out of a board meeting where his own brother had voted to remove him from the company, where his business partner of 20 years had stood up with documents proving Marcus had supposedly been siphoning funds, where his wife, his beautiful wife, who had stood beside him through every gala and every interview, had sat in the back row with her lawyer, saying nothing, her silence more damning than any accusation. They had planned it, all of them, coordinated it like a military operation. His brother wanted control, his partner wanted the patents, his wife wanted the assets. And Marcus, the man who had trusted them all, who had built everything with his bare hands and shared it freely, was left with nothing but the clothes on his back and a car he had bought in cash. Years ago, because he liked having something that was just his, he drove for hours. The city gave way to suburbs, then to stretches of highway where the lights grew farther apart and the darkness pressed in from all sides. His phone kept buzzing in the footwell where it had landed, vibrating against the carpet like an angry insect. He didn't pick it up. He knew what was there. Lawyers, journalists, people he thought were friends, calling to get his side of the story, or more likely, to distance themselves before the scandal spread. In the world Marcus had lived in, association was currency, and his value had just dropped to zero. The Moonlight Motor Inn appeared like a mirage around 2 in the morning. It was the kind of place that existed in the gaps between real destinations, a squat building with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered between pink and darkness. Half the letters were burned out. It just read Moonlight Inn in stuttering light. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few cars that looked like they had been there for days, covered in road dust and resignation. Marcus pulled in and sat there for a long moment, staring at the cracked pavement and the weeds growing through it. This was as far from his penthouse as a person could get. That was exactly the point. He grabbed his wallet from the center console, leaving the broken phone where it lay. When he stepped out of the car, the air smelled like gasoline and distant rain. The office was lit by a single fluorescent bulb that hummed like it was in pain. Behind the desk sat a man who looked about 70, with gray stubble and eyes that had seen everything twice. He looked up from a small television, playing an infomercial, took in Marcus's expensive watch and tailored shirt, and raised an eyebrow. Marcus pulled out $300 in cash. 1 week. No questions. No ID. The old man studied him for a beat, then shrugged and took the money. Room 12. End of the row. Quiet spot. He slid a key across the counter, an actual metal key attached to a plastic diamond with the room number stamped on it. Checkout's at 11, but nobody really checks. Marcus took the key and walked back out into the night. Room 12 was exactly what he expected. A door that stuck in its frame, carpet that had been beige once, but now was the color of old coffee, 2 beds with thin floral spreads, a television bolted to the wall, a bathroom the size of a closet. The air conditioner rattled like it was full of loose screws. There was a smell he couldn't quite identify, something between cleaning chemicals and decay. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands. These hands had signed billion-dollar deals, had shaken hands with presidents and tech giants and oil magnates, had held his wife on their wedding day, had helped his brother through college, had sealed partnerships that changed industries. And every single person those hands had touched had betrayed him. His brother had looked him in the eye that morning over coffee and said nothing about what was coming. His wife had kissed him goodbye like she always did. His partner had sent him a text about lunch plans while the legal papers were already being filed. How long had they been planning it? Months? Years? How many smiles had been fake? How many conversations had been reconnaissance? How many moments of apparent love had been strategic positioning? Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, a physical sensation like ice breaking. He had built his entire life on trust, on the belief that if you were good to people, if you were honest and generous and loyal, they would be the same to you. That belief had just been revealed as the delusion of a fool. He lay back on the bed fully clothed and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. It looked like a map of somewhere he had never been, somewhere he could never go. The air conditioner rattled on, filling the room with cool air and white noise. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Marcus Hale had absolutely nowhere to be, and no one who wanted anything from him. He should have felt free. Instead, he felt like he was disappearing. The first 3 days passed in a fog. Marcus barely left the room. He ate from vending machines, crackers, and candy bars that tasted like cardboard and sugar. He showered in the tiny bathroom, where the water pressure was weak and the temperature fluctuated wildly. He watched television without seeing it, cooking shows and news programs and old movies that washed over him like white noise. He slept in bursts, waking every few hours to the sound of cars on the highway, or people arguing in the parking lot, or his own thoughts screaming in the silence. On the 4th day, he started to hear the boy next door. At first, it was just footsteps, light and quick, pacing back and forth in the room that shared a wall with his. Then voices, a woman's voice, tired and strained, and a child's voice, higher and clearer. They were talking about dinner, about finding a place to eat that wasn't too expensive. Marcus pressed his ear to the wall without meaning to, and listened to them debate between fast food, options with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for corporate negotiations. "But I like the chicken nuggets here better," the boy said. "I know, baby, but the burger place has a $1 menu. We have to be smart." "Okay, can I get a toy?" A pause. "We'll see." Marcus pulled away from the wall, feeling sick. He had spent more on a single bottle of wine at charity dinners than these people were trying to budget for a meal. He could hear the exhaustion in the woman's voice, the weight of doing math in her head, of counting dollars and making choices. The boy sounded young, maybe 7 or 8, old enough to understand money was tight, but young enough to still ask for toys. That night, Marcus had a dream about his childhood. He was 8 years old, standing in a grocery store with his mother, watching her put items back on the shelf because the total was too high. Cereal, then juice, then the cookies he had asked for. His mother's face had been so tired, so worn, and young Marcus had felt a shame so profound it had made him want to disappear into the floor. He had promised himself then that he would never be poor again, that he would make enough money that no one in his family would ever have to put cookies back. He woke up with tears on his face and the sound of crying coming through the wall, but it wasn't the boy. It was him. Marcus was crying, harsh broken sounds that he couldn't stop, and he could hear movement next door, footsteps approaching the wall. He held his breath, pressed his hands over his mouth, trying to be silent, The footsteps retreated. He heard the woman's voice, soft and muffled. "It's okay. People have bad nights. Let him be." Marcus cried harder, because a stranger on the other side of a motel wall had shown him more compassion in that moment than anyone in his real life had in months. The days continued to blur. Marcus began to recognize patterns. The woman and boy left every morning around 8, came back around 6. Sometimes they brought food back with them. Sometimes they didn't, and Marcus would hear the quiet sounds of them eating whatever they had scrounged, crackers or fruit or bread. They watched television together, game shows and sitcoms, and the boy would laugh at the jokes, bright and clear. The woman would laugh too, but hers always sounded like it cost her something. Marcus started timing his exits from the room to avoid them. He didn't want to see their faces, didn't want to make the sounds to the wall into real people. It was easier to exist in this limbo, where nothing was quite real. But on the 7th day, as he was coming back from the vending machines with an armful of junk food, he heard a small voice behind him. "Mister?" Marcus turned. The boy was standing in the doorway of room 11, wearing shorts and a faded superhero shirt. He was small for his age, with dark hair that stuck up in the back and eyes that were too serious for a child. He was holding something in his hands, cupped carefully like it might escape. "Yeah?" Marcus's voice came out rough. He hadn't spoken to another human being in a week. The boy looked uncertain, glancing back into his room, where Marcus could see the woman moving around, unaware of the conversation happening outside. "My mom says I shouldn't bother people, but I heard you last night. Are you okay?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Are you okay?" 4 words. 4 simple words that no one had asked him in so long, he couldn't remember the last time. His lawyers had asked what he wanted to do. His accountant had asked how to protect the remaining assets. Random journalists had asked for statements. But no one had asked if he was okay. "I'm fine," Marcus said, the lie automatic. The boy studied him with those 2 old eyes. "You don't sound fine. You sound like my mom when she cries in the bathroom and thinks I can't hear." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He stood there in the doorway of his motel room, arms full of vending machine garbage, staring at this child who had just seen through him in 5 seconds flat. The boy seemed to take his silence as permission to continue. "I wanted to give you this." He held out his cupped hands and opened them slowly. Inside was a small plastic toy, a blue dinosaur, maybe 2 inches tall, the kind that came in a kid's meal. My grandma used to tell me that when you're sad, you should hold something and think about happy things. It helps. You can keep it if you want. I have 2. Marcus looked at the tiny plastic dinosaur, at this child's most precious possession being offered with both hands. And something inside him that had been frozen for days finally cracked all the way through. He set down his armload of junk food and knelt so he was eye level with the boy. "What's your name?" "Daniel." Danny. "I'm Marcus." He took the dinosaur carefully, holding it in his palm like it was made of crystal. "Thank you. This is the nicest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time." Danny smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. "You're welcome. My mom says being nice doesn't cost anything, so we might as well do it a lot." From inside the room, the woman's voice called out, "Danny, who are you talking to?" "Just the neighbor, Mom. I'll be right there." Danny gave Marcus one more serious look. "I hope you feel better, Mr. Marcus. Maybe we can talk again sometime." He disappeared back into his room, and Marcus was left kneeling in the doorway, holding a plastic dinosaur, feeling like he had just been handed the most valuable thing in the world. He went back into his room and set the dinosaur on the knitstand where he could see it. That night, when the darkness pressed in and the thoughts started to spiral, he reached out and held the little blue dinosaur in his hand. And for the first time in a week, he fell asleep without crying. He didn't know it yet, But that plastic toy was about to save his life, because the next day, Danny was going to knock on his door again. And this time, Marcus was going to let him in. And that was when everything was going to change. The knock came at 9:30 in the morning on the 8th day. 3 quick taps, polite and tentative. Marcus was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, holding the little blue dinosaur between his thumb and forefinger. He had been awake since dawn, listening to the sounds of the motel coming to life. Trucks on the highway, doors opening and closing, the ice machine clanking down the hall. The knock startled him enough that he sat up, disoriented. No one knocked on his door. No one knew he was here. "Mr. Marcus?" Danny's voice came through the thin door, small and uncertain. "Are you awake?" Marcus stood, ran a hand through his hair, realized he looked like hell, and decided he didn't care. When he opened the door, Danny was standing there in the same superhero shirt, this time with jeans that were too short for him. He was holding a paper bag in one hand and had an expression on his face that was half hopeful, half nervous. "Hi," Danny said. "I brought you breakfast." "Well, it's not really breakfast. It's just granola bars and an apple. But my mom says breakfast is important, and I heard you last night. And I don't think you're eating right." Marcus looked down at this child, who had heard him pacing at 3 in the morning, who had somehow decided that the solution was to bring food, and felt that crack in his chest widen a little more. "Danny, you don't have to do that. I know, but I wanted to." Danny held out the bag. "Can I come in? Just for a minute. My mom's at the laundromat down the street. She said I could stay in the room and watch cartoons, but cartoons are kind of boring when you've seen them 100 times. Marcus hesitated. Every instinct told him to say no, to close the door, to maintain the isolation that had kept him safe for the past week. But Danny was looking at him with those serious eyes, and Marcus found himself stepping back and opening the door wider. "Yeah, I'll go, okay?" Just for a minute, Danny came in and looked around the room with open curiosity. He seemed to catalog everything: the unmade bed, the junk food wrappers in the trash, the broken phone that Marcus had finally retrieved from the car and left on the dresser like evidence of a crime. His eyes landed on the blue dinosaur on the nightstand, and his face lit up. "You kept it, and you put it somewhere safe. It's the most important thing in this room," Marcus said, and meant it. Danny sat on the edge of the second bed, the one Marcus hadn't touched, and opened the paper bag. He pulled out 2 granola bars and an apple, set them carefully on the floral bedspread. "I wasn't sure what you liked. My mom says apples are nature's candy, but I think they're just apples. Do you like apples?" "Yeah, I like apples." Marcus sat on the opposite bed, maintaining distance, but accepting the offering. He picked up one of the granola bars and opened it, took a bite. It was the oat and honey kind, the kind he used to buy in bulk for the office break room. It tasted like cardboard, but he chewed and swallowed, and Danny watched him with satisfaction. "Good. You're really skinny, Mr. Marcus. Like scary skinny. My mom says when people get too sad, sometimes they forget to eat. Your mom sounds smart. She is. She knows a lot of things." Danny swung his legs, heels bouncing off the bed frame. "She says we're on an adventure right now. That's why we're staying here." Because of the adventure, Marcus knew what kind of adventure that was. The kind where you couldn't afford anything else. The kind where a cheap motel was better than a car or a shelter or the streets. He had seen enough of the world to recognize poverty dressed up in optimistic language. What kind of adventure? The kind where we're going to California to live with my aunt. My mom says California is nice, and there's beaches, and my aunt has a house with a yard. Danny's voice was bright, but there was something underneath it, something fragile. "We just have to get there first, and we're taking our time. Seeing things, Marcus repeated. "Like this motel, Well, yeah. And yesterday, we went to a park. It had ducks. I fed them bread, even though the sign said not to. But the ducks looked hungry, so I did it anyway. Danny leaned forward, conspiratorial. My mom took a picture on her phone. She takes pictures of everything. She says when we get to California, we'll make an album and remember all the good parts. Marcus thought about his own phone, cracked and dead on the dresser. He hadn't taken a picture in years that wasn't for business. Galas and ribbon cuttings and handshakes. Memories manufactured for press releases. Nothing real, nothing good. How long have you been traveling? He asked. 3 weeks. We started in Ohio. That's where we used to live. With my dad before. Danny's voice shifted, got quieter. But he doesn't live there anymore. He went somewhere else. So now it's just me and Mom. There was a story there, Marcus could tell. A painful one. The kind that left scars you couldn't see. He recognized it because he had his own now. I'm sorry. It's okay. My mom says sometimes people leave because they're not ready to stay. And that's their choice, not ours. Danny recited it like he had heard it many times. She says we're better off making our own adventure. Your mom really is smart. Yeah, Danny smiled, but it flickered. Sometimes I hear her crying, though. At night, when she thinks I'm asleep, she tries to be quiet, but the walls are thin, kind of like here. You can hear everything. Marcus felt his face heat up. Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't mean to keep you up. You didn't keep me up. I don't sleep that good anyway. Danny picked at the edge of the bedspread, pulling at a loose thread. I have bad dreams sometimes. About my dad. About him yelling. I wake up and I think he's there, but he's not. It's just the highway. Or other people. Or you. Marcus felt like he had been punched. This child, this 8-year-old boy, had been lying in the next room, listening to him fall apart and recognizing the sounds because he knew them from his own life. They were both haunted. They were both carrying weight too heavy for their frames. They were both trying to pretend they were okay when they were anything but. Danny, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to hear that. Any of it. Mine or your dad's. It's not your fault. You're sad about something. I can tell. Danny looked up, and his eyes were ancient. My dad used to get sad too, then angry. Then he'd break things. Are you going to break things? No, Marcus said immediately, firmly. No, I'm not going to break anything. I'm just going to stay here and be quiet and figure things out. Okay, good. Danny seemed to relax a fraction. I didn't think you were the breaking things type. You seem more like the crying type. That's better, I think. Crying's just water. Breaking is forever. Marcus had to look away because the simplicity of that statement, the clear-eyed wisdom of it, was too much. Crying's just water. Breaking is forever. This child had learned that lesson in the hardest way possible, watching his father destroy a family. And now he was sitting in a motel room with a stranger, offering granola bars and absolution. You're a good kid, Danny. Your mom did a hell of a job raising you. She says I'm her reason. That's why she keeps going. Because of me. Danny's voice went soft, almost a whisper. Sometimes I wish I wasn't. Sometimes I wish she could just be happy without having to take care of me all the time. I think I make things harder. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees, looking directly at Danny. Listen to me. You don't make things harder. You make things possible. Do you understand that? Your mom keeps going because you give her a reason to. That's not a burden. That's a gift. You're her gift. Danny's eyes got shiny. Really, really, trust me on this. I know what it's like to feel like you're too much for people, but you're not. You're exactly enough. A tear slipped down Danny's cheek, and he wiped it away quickly with the back of his hand. Thanks, Mr. Marcus. That's nice. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling around them like dust. Outside, a car started, the engine coughing to life, Someone shouted something indistinct. The world kept turning, indifferent to the small moment of connection happening in room 12. Danny cleared his throat. So what are you sad about? You don't have to tell me, but sometimes talking helps. My mom says keeping stuff inside is like swallowing rocks. Eventually they get too heavy. Marcus considered lying, considered deflecting. But something about Danny's openness, about the way he had just laid his own pain out like cards on a table, made Marcus want to be honest. People I trusted did something really bad to me. They took things that were mine. They lied, and now I don't know who I am anymore. Danny nodded like that made perfect sense. My dad did that to my mom. He took money, and he lied, and he left. She was really sad for a long time. But then she decided we were going to have an adventure instead. She said we could be sad, or we could be moving. And moving seemed better. So you're moving? Yeah, all the way to California. It's really far. But my mom says every day we get a little closer. Danny tilted his head. Where are you moving to? Marcus laughed, a short, bitter sound. Nowhere. I'm just here. But you can't stay here forever. This place smells weird, and the beds are lumpy. You should be moving too. I don't know where to go. That's okay. My mom didn't either at first. She just picked a direction and started driving. She says sometimes you have to get lost before you can find yourself. Danny stood up, brushed imaginary crumbs off his jeans. I should go back to my room before my mom gets back. She worries if I'm not where I'm supposed to be. But maybe I can come back tomorrow? If you want. Marcus found himself nodding before he consciously made the decision. Yeah, you can come back. I'd like that. Danny's face broke into a wide smile, and Marcus saw what he must have looked like before life got hard, before his father left, before adventures became euphemisms for survival. Cool. Maybe we can watch cartoons together. They're better when someone else is there. Less lonely. He headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. Mr. Marcus, I'm glad you're here. Not glad you're sad, but glad you're next door. It's nice having a neighbor. And he was gone, slipping out the door and closing it softly behind him. Marcus sat on the bed, holding the half-eaten granola bar, feeling like something fundamental had just shifted in the universe. He had been alone for 8 days. He had wanted to be alone. But Danny's presence, his questions, his simple kindness, had cracked something open that Marcus had been trying to keep sealed. He looked at the blue dinosaur on the nightstand, looked at the granola bars, and the apple still sitting on the opposite bed. Evidence of care. Evidence that someone had noticed him, had thought about him, had decided he was worth a paper bag of food and 15 minutes of conversation. That night, Marcus didn't cry. He lay in bed, listening to the sounds through the wall, the murmur of the television, Danny's laughter, the woman's softer responses. A family, broken and struggling and doing their best. And for the first time since he had checked into this place, Marcus felt something other than despair. He felt curious about Danny's story, about his mother, about how they had ended up here and where they were going, about what it meant to be lost and moving at the same time. The next morning, the knock came earlier, 8:30. Marcus was already awake, showered, wearing clean clothes for the first time in days. When he opened the door, Danny was standing there with his mother this time. She was in her early 30s, Marcus guessed, with the same dark hair as her son and eyes that had seen too much. She was thin, tired, wearing clothes that had been washed too many times. But she smiled when she saw him, a real smile that reached her eyes. Hi, I'm Sarah. Danny's been talking about you. I wanted to introduce myself properly. She held out her hand. I hope he hasn't been bothering you. Marcus shook her hand. Her grip was firm despite the fragility. Not at all. He's been great. Really great. He says you like granola bars. Sarah's smile turned slightly embarrassed. I know it's not much, but I appreciate you being kind to him. He doesn't have a lot of people to talk to right now. I don't either, Marcus admitted. So it works out. Danny was bouncing on his heels. Mom, can Mr. Marcus have breakfast with us? We have cereal. The kind with marshmallows. Sarah looked uncertain, clearly not wanting to impose. But Marcus found himself nodding. I'd like that. If you don't mind, we don't mind at all. Come on over. Room 11's practically identical, so you won't get lost. Marcus followed them into their room, and Sarah was right. It was identical, except for the details that made it lived in. Clothes folded neatly on the dresser. A backpack in the corner, worn and covered in patches. A stuffed rabbit on one of the pillows. Pictures on the knitstand, people Marcus didn't recognize, smiling in happier times. The television was on, playing morning cartoons with the sound low. They ate cereal out of plastic bowls, sitting on the beds, watching a show about talking animals. Danny narrated the plot points Marcus had missed, explaining character relationships and ongoing jokes with the seriousness of a scholar. Sarah laughed and corrected him occasionally, adding her own commentary. And Marcus sat there, eating $5 cereal in a $20 motel room, feeling more at home than he had felt in his penthouse in years. This was real. This was connection. This was what he had been missing while he built empires and collected acquaintances. This simple human thing, sharing a meal, sharing space, sharing the small moments that made up a life. When he went back to his room an hour later, Marcus sat on the bed and picked up his broken phone. The screen was shattered, but it still worked, just barely. He scrolled through the messages he had been ignoring. His lawyers had made decisions without him. His accountant had moved money. The press had written stories. His brother had released a statement expressing disappointment. His wife had filed papers. His old life had continued without him, and he realized he didn't care. That life had been a lie. These people, Sarah and Danny, with their dollar menu debates and their adventure to California and their plastic bowls of marshmallow cereal, they were the truth. Marcus set the phone down and looked at the blue dinosaur. Tomorrow, he would knock on their door. And maybe the day after that. And maybe he would ask about their adventure. And maybe he would find a way to help. And maybe, just maybe, he would figure out how to move forward instead of just disappearing. Because Danny was right. You couldn't stay here forever. Eventually, you had to pick a direction and start moving. Even if you didn't know where you were going. Even if you were lost. The days began to develop a rhythm. Marcus would wake early, shower, make himself presentable in ways that had stopped mattering when he first arrived. Around 9, Danny would knock, or sometimes Sarah would, with small offerings. Coffee from the gas station down the street. Day-old donuts from the bakery outlet. Once, inexplicably, a magazine someone had left in the laundromat. These small gifts, these gestures of inclusion, became the anchors that kept Marcus tethered to something resembling humanity. On the 10th day, Marcus knocked on their door first. He had driven to the grocery store. The first time he had left the motel for anything other than vending machines, and bought actual food, fresh bread, peanut butter and jelly, bananas, a gallon of milk. Nothing expensive, nothing that would make Sarah feel uncomfortable, but enough to contribute instead of just receiving. When Sarah opened the door and saw the grocery bags, her expression went through several stages. Surprise, discomfort, resistance, and finally, reluctant gratitude. Marcus, you didn't have to do this. I know. I wanted to. Fair's fair. You've been feeding me for days. He held up the bags. Besides, I have no idea what to do with groceries in that room. No fridge, no table. I figured we could have lunch together. If that's okay. Danny appeared behind his mother, eyes wide. Is that peanut butter? The crunchy kind? It is, Mom, can we, please? Sarah stepped back, opening the door wider. Okay, yes. Come in. Thank you. They made sandwiches together, an assembly line on the dresser. Sarah cut the bread with a plastic knife from a fast food place. Danny spread the peanut butter with serious concentration. Marcus added jelly, trying not to use too much, but also trying to make sure every bite would be good. They sat on the beds again, paper towels for plates, and ate like it was a feast. So, Marcus said, swallowing a bite of sandwich, you're heading to California. How much further do you have to go? Sarah wiped jelly from the corner of her mouth. About 1,000 miles, give or take. We've been averaging 100 miles a day. Sometimes more if we get an early start. Sometimes less if we find somewhere interesting. 100 miles a day, Marcus calculated quickly. So 10 more days. At least. About that. Yeah. Sarah's expression was carefully neutral. Maybe more. Depends on how the car holds up. And how much gas costs. And whether we run into any surprises. Translation, Marcus understood, depends on whether we run out of money first. He had seen her counting bills late at night through the gap in the curtains, had heard her on the phone with her sister, reassuring her that they were making good progress, that everything was fine, don't worry. The fragility of their situation hung in the air like humidity. Danny, oblivious or choosing to be, launched into a description of all the things he wanted to see in California. The ocean, Disneyland, though he said it in a way that suggested he knew it was unlikely. His aunt's dog, a golden retriever named Sonny, his cousin, who was 2 years older and apparently could skateboard. He painted a picture of a future that was bright and certain, and Sarah let him, smiling and adding details, building the dream together. Marcus listened and felt something old and dusty wake up inside him. The part that used to solve problems. The part that used to see resources and opportunities and make connections. He had spent a week in paralysis. But sitting here, listening to Danny's hopes and Sarah's careful budgeting, he felt the gears start to turn again. What kind of car are you driving? He asked. A Honda Civic, 98. It's old, but it runs. Sarah's tone was defensive. We've kept up with the maintenance. I'm sure you have. I wasn't questioning that. I was just thinking about the desert, Arizona, and California. That's going to be hot. Really hot. You'll want to make sure the cooling system is solid. We had the radiator flushed before we left. Sarah paused. But, yeah, I'm a little worried about that part. There's a mechanic 2 exits up. I saw the sign when I was driving around yesterday. They do free inspections. Might be worth having them take a look. Just to be safe, Sarah considered this. That's not a bad idea. I'll call them tomorrow. They finished their sandwiches in comfortable silence. Danny turned on the television and found a nature documentary about dolphins. They watched together, Danny providing his own narration about what the dolphins were thinking, giving them voices and personalities. Sarah laughed, and Marcus found himself laughing too, something he had not done in so long it almost hurt. When Marcus returned to his room that afternoon, he sat down with his broken phone and started making calls, not to his lawyers, not to his accountant, to people from a different part of his life. A friend from college who ran a nonprofit helping low-income families. A woman he had met at a charity event who worked in job placement. A guy he had done business with years ago who now owned a chain of auto repair shops across the Southwest. He was careful. He didn't use names. He didn't give specifics. He just asked questions. What kind of help was available for families in transition? What resources existed for single mothers traveling cross-country? Were there programs that could help with vehicle maintenance, with gas cards, with emergency funds? He took notes on the back of the grocery receipt, filling it with phone numbers and website addresses and names of organizations. By the time he was done, It was dark outside, and Marcus had the skeleton of a plan. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make Sarah feel like charity. Just information. Resources. Options she might not know existed. He would give it to her tomorrow, casually, like he had stumbled across it. That night, Marcus dreamed about the ocean. He had not thought about the ocean in years, but suddenly he was there, standing on a beach somewhere, watching waves roll in. Danny was there, building a sandcastle. Sarah was there, sitting on a towel, face tilted up to the sun. And Marcus was there too, not the billionaire version, not the betrayed version, just a person, part of this small family moment, included in content. He woke up before dawn with a clarity he had not felt since this nightmare started. He was not going back to his old life. That life was gone, burned to the ground by people he had trusted. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that life had been wrong from the start, built on the wrong foundations, aimed at the wrong goals. Maybe this motel room, this unexpected connection with strangers, maybe this was a chance to build something different, something real. The knock came at 7 in the morning, urgent and scared. Marcus was already awake, dressed, and he opened the door immediately. Danny was there, still in his pajamas, face pale. "Mr. Marcus, something's wrong with my mom. She's sick, really sick, and I don't know what to do." Marcus didn't hesitate. He followed Danny into room 11. Sarah was on the bed, curled up, shaking. Her face was flushed, her breathing shallow. When she saw Marcus, she tried to sit up, tried to speak, but her voice came out as a croak. "Sarah, how long have you been feeling bad?" Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, put a hand on her forehead. She was burning up. Since last night, thought it would pass. But it got worse. She coughed, a wet rattling sound. "Danny, baby, I'm okay. Don't worry." But Danny was worrying. Marcus could see it in every line of his small body. And Sarah was not okay. This was not just a cold. This was something that needed medical attention. "Okay," Marcus said, making his voice calm and confident, even though he was anything but. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to drive you to the urgent care center I saw about 5 miles from here. Danny, you're going to come with us. Sarah, can you walk?" "I think so. Maybe." She tried to stand and swayed. Marcus caught her, his arm around her waist, taking her weight. "I've got you. It's okay. We'll figure this out." They made a strange procession out to Marcus's car. Sarah leaning on him, Danny carrying a bag with their essentials, moving through the early morning light like refugees. Marcus got Sarah into the passenger seat, made sure Danny was buckled in the back. As he drove, following the directions his phone's GPS managed to provide despite the cracked screen, Sarah drifted in and out of awareness. "Can't afford this," she mumbled at one point. "No insurance. Can't afford it. Don't worry about that right now. Just focus on breathing." At the urgent care center, Marcus paid the intake fee in cash before Sarah could protest. He sat with Danny in the waiting room while they took her back, answering the boy's frightened questions with reassurances he hoped were true. "Is my mom going to die?" "No, she's going to be fine. They're going to give her medicine, and she'd be better soon." "But what if she's not? What if something really bad is wrong?" Marcus pulled Danny against his side, let the boy lean into him. "Then we'll deal with it, together. But your mom is strong, Danny. She's one of the strongest people I've ever met. She's not going anywhere." An hour later, a doctor came out and explained that Sarah had a severe case of bronchitis verging on pneumonia. She was dehydrated and exhausted, her immune system compromised by stress and poor nutrition. They were giving her 4 fluids and antibiotics. She would need to rest for at least a week. No travel, no exertion. Marcus absorbed this information and made a decision. "She can stay at the motel. I'll make sure she rests. I'll take care of things. The doctor looked skeptical. Are you family? I'm what she's got right now, and that's going to be enough. They released Sarah that afternoon with a bag of medications and strict instructions. Marcus drove them back to the motel, got Sarah into bed, made sure she took her first dose of antibiotics. Danny hovered, scared and trying not to show it. Sarah kept apologizing, kept saying she would be fine, kept trying to make plans for leaving tomorrow. Sarah, stop. Marcus knelt beside the bed, so he was at her eye level. You're not going anywhere for a week. Doctor's orders. You're going to stay here and get better. I'm going to make sure you and Danny have what you need. And before you argue, before you tell me you can't accept help, let me say this. You've been helping me for days, feeding me, talking to me, keeping me human. Let me return the favor. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to repay me. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Marcus stood, pulled the blanket up over her. Now sleep. Danny and I are going to go get some supplies. We'll be back in an hour. In the car, Danny was quiet. Marcus drove to the grocery store, and they walked the aisles together, picking out soup and crackers and juice, and all the things you needed when you were sick. Danny added a few things silently. A coloring book, crayons, a small stuffed dog that looked like his aunt's golden retriever. At the checkout, Danny looked up at Marcus. Why are you doing this? For us? Marcus thought about all the ways he could answer that. Because I have the money and you need help. Because I'm alone and you gave me company. Because the universe is chaos and small kindnesses are the only things that matter. But what he said was simpler. Because you knocked on my door with a plastic dinosaur. And that changed everything. They drove back to the motel as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Sarah was asleep when they returned, breathing easier now that the antibiotics were working. Marcus set up camp in room 11, organizing the supplies, making sure everything was within reach. Danny helped, serious and focused, and when Sarah woke up briefly around midnight, confused and feverish, Danny was there with water, and Marcus was there with medicine, and together they got her through the night. It was the first night in the Moonlight Motor Inn that Marcus did not spend alone, and it was the first night that he realized something crucial. He had spent his entire adult life building a legacy, accumulating wealth and power and prestige. But none of that had mattered when the betrayal came. None of that had protected him. None of that had been real. This, sitting in a motel room at midnight, helping a sick woman and a scared child, this was real. This mattered. This was what it meant to be human. And for the first time since his world had fallen apart, Marcus Hale felt like he might actually survive the wreckage. Not by rebuilding what had been, but by building something entirely new. Something that couldn't be taken away, because it was never about possession. It was about connection. It was about showing up. It was about being present for the people who needed you, even if they were strangers, even if there was nothing in it for you, except the chance to be decent. As he dozed off in the chair beside Sarah's bed, Danny curled up asleep on the other bed. Marcus thought about his brother and his wife and his business partner. They had taken everything, but they had also freed him to discover this, to be this, to find the parts of himself that had been buried under ambition and expectation. They thought they had destroyed him. They had no idea they had just set him free. Sarah's recovery was slow. The first 2 days, she barely woke except to take medicine and sip broth. Marcus and Danny fell into a routine born of necessity. Marcus would wake early, check on Sarah, then take Danny to the gas station for breakfast. They would sit on the curb outside, eating microwaved breakfast sandwiches and watching trucks roll past on the highway. Danny would talk about his mom, about Ohio, about the life they had left behind, and Marcus would listen, really listen, In a way, he realized he had not listened to anyone in years. "My dad used to be nice," Danny said on the third morning, unprompted, watching a semi-truck rumble past. "When I was really little, I remember him giving me piggyback rides, teaching me to ride my bike, but then something changed. My mom says he got sick. Not sick like with a cold, sick in his head, and he wouldn't get help. He said he didn't need help. He said everyone else was the problem." Marcus unwrapped his breakfast sandwich slowly, giving Danny space to continue. He started yelling a lot. About money. About my mom not working enough. About me being too expensive. I didn't know I was expensive. I didn't think kids cost money. I thought parents just took care of you because they loved you. Danny's voice was small. "But I guess love isn't always enough. Your dad being sick wasn't about you," Marcus said carefully. "That's important to understand. Mental illness, addiction, whatever it was, that's not on you. You were just a kid. You are just a kid. I know. My mom tells me that all the time. But it's hard to believe sometimes, because if I wasn't there, maybe they would have stayed together. Maybe they would have been happy. Danny, look at me." Marcus waited until the boy turned, met his eyes. "Your mom is happy. Maybe not right now, because she's sick and things are hard. But she's happy because she has you. You heard her say it. You're her reason, and that's not a burden. That's never a burden. That's the best thing a person can be." Danny's eyes welled up. "I miss him sometimes, even though he was mean, even though he made my mom cry. I miss the dad he used to be. Is that weird? No, that's not weird at all. That's human. We miss the people we loved even when they hurt us, especially when they hurt us, because we keep hoping they'll turn back into the version we remember. Do you miss the people who hurt you?" Danny asked, turning the question around with a child's directness. Marcus thought about his brother, his wife, his partner. Did he miss them? Or did he miss the illusion of them, the versions he had constructed in his head that had never really existed? "I miss who I thought they were, but I don't think those people were ever real. I think I made them up. I saw what I wanted to see. That's sad." "Yeah, it is." They finished their breakfast in silence, and when they went back to the motel, Sarah was awake, sitting up in bed, looking more like herself. The fever had broken overnight. She was still weak, still coughing, but her eyes were clear. "Hey," she said when they came in. "You guys have a nice breakfast?" "The best," Danny said, climbing onto the bed beside her carefully. "Mr. Marcus bought me a chocolate milk." "Did he? Well, aren't you spoiled?" Sarah looked at Marcus over Danny's head, and there was something in her expression, gratitude, and something else, something deeper. "Thank you. For everything? I don't know what we would have done if you weren't here. You would have figured it out. You always do." Marcus set a container of soup on the nightstand. "But I'm glad I could help. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, but better than yesterday." She took a sip of water, swallowed carefully. "The doctor said a week, but I think I can probably travel in 4 or 5 days. We've already lost too much time. Sarah, you need to follow the doctor's orders. Pushing yourself is what got you sick in the first place. I don't have a choice. The longer we stay here, the more money we spend. My sister is expecting us. I can't just keep delaying." Marcus pulled up the chair he had been sleeping in. "Have you called her? Told her what happened?" "Not yet. I don't want her to worry. She's already doing us a huge favor, letting us come stay with her. If she thinks I can't even make it there without falling apart, she might change her mind. Or she might understand that things happen and offer support. Have you considered that?" Sarah looked away. "You don't know my family. We don't ask for help. We figure it out ourselves. Even when figuring it out yourself makes things worse." Even then, Marcus recognized the stubbornness, because he had worn it himself for years. The belief that asking for help was weakness, that needing anyone made you vulnerable. He had built an empire on that belief, and it had left him completely alone when everything collapsed. Sarah, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to really hear it. There is no prize for doing everything yourself. There is no trophy for suffering in silence. All you get is exhausted and sick and isolated. And your kid grows up thinking that's normal. That's what love looks like. Struggling alone. Sarah's expression crumpled slightly. I'm doing my best. I know you are. Your best is incredible. But let people help you. Let your sister help you. Let me help you. Why though? Why do you want to help us? You don't even know us. I know enough. I know you're good people. I know Danny is a great kid. I know you're trying to build a better life. That's more than I knew about half the people I work with for 20 years. Marcus leaned forward. And maybe I'm helping you because you helped me first. When I was at my lowest, when I was ready to just disappear, your kid knocked on my door with a plastic dinosaur. Do you have any idea what that meant? What that did for me? He told me. He said you were crying. He wanted to make you feel better. He did. He absolutely did. And now I want to return the favor. Sarah wiped at her eyes. This is hard for me. Accepting things I know. But try. For Danny, if not for yourself. She nodded slowly, and Marcus saw the exhaustion in every line of her face. This woman had been holding the world together through sheer force of will, and she was so tired, so profoundly tired, and she was finally letting herself lean on someone else. That night, after Sarah had eaten some soup and fallen back asleep, Marcus and Danny sat in room 12, watching television with the sound low. It was some animated movie about robots, but neither of them was really watching. Danny was drawing in his new coloring book, and Marcus was thinking about the list of resources he had compiled, trying to figure out the best way to present it without making Sarah feel like charity. Mr. Marcus? Danny said, not looking up from his drawing. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why were you crying? That first night? When I heard you through the wall? Marcus considered his answer carefully. Danny deserved honesty, but he also deserved an answer he could understand. People I loved very much did something really hurtful. They took things from me, and they lied to me. And it made me feel like I didn't matter. Like I was stupid for ever trusting them. That's how my mom felt when my dad left. She said she felt stupid, but I told her she wasn't stupid. She was just nice. And sometimes nice people get hurt by not nice people. Your mom is very wise. And so are you. Do you still feel stupid? Sometimes, but less than I did. Being here, meeting you and your mom, it's helped me remember that not everyone is like that. Some people are genuinely good. Some people help because they want to, not because they want something back. Danny finished coloring in a dinosaur, blue like the one he had given Marcus, and held up the picture. This is you. You're a sad dinosaur. But you're getting happier. See? I drew a smile. Marcus took the picture, studied the carefully colored creature with its too big smile and its bright eyes. I love it. Can I keep it? Yeah, you can put it next to the other dinosaur. So he has a friend. Marcus set the picture on the knitstand next to the plastic toy, creating a small shrine to unexpected kindness. Thank you, Danny. This is going to be my most prized possession. Even more than all your money? Marcus froze. What makes you think I have money? Danny shrugged, still coloring. Your car is really nice. And your watch. And the way you talk. My mom says you can tell a lot about people by how they carry themselves. You carry yourself like someone who's used to having stuff, but you're not mean about it. Some rich people are mean. You're nice. Marcus had spent a week trying to disappear, to erase every marker of his former life, and this 8-year-old had seen through it in days. I used to have money. A lot of money, but I don't know what I have anymore. It's complicated. Do you miss it? Being rich? I miss feeling safe. I miss thinking I knew what my life was. But the money itself? No, I don't think I do. Because the money didn't make me happy. It just made me busy. My mom says money doesn't buy happiness, but I think it probably helps. Like, we'd be happier if we had enough for a hotel with a pool. And maybe some ice cream. Single quotes. Marcus laughed, a real laugh that came from his chest. You're absolutely right. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it does make being unhappy a lot more comfortable. How about this? Tomorrow, if your mom is feeling better, we'll get ice cream. The good kind. From a proper ice cream shop, not a gas station. Really? Can we? We can. It's a promise. Danny launched himself across the space between their beds and hugged Marcus hard. It was unexpected and fierce, and Marcus found himself hugging back. This small body that smelled like cheap soap and childhood, and something inside him that had been frozen for so long finally completely thawed. Over the next few days, they settled into a strange little family unit. Sarah recovered slowly, spending most of her time in bed, reading or watching television. Danny and Marcus became her support system, bringing food, managing medications, keeping her company. In the evenings, after Sarah had eaten dinner and taken her medicine, the three of them would gather in room 11 and watch movies on the small television, making up stories about the characters, laughing at the bad parts, getting invested in the plot twists. And late at night, after Danny had fallen asleep and Sarah was drowsing, Marcus and Sarah would talk in low voices, sharing pieces of their stories, like cards in a slow poker game. Sarah told him about her marriage, about watching someone she loved descend into anger and paranoia, about the day she realized she had to leave or lose herself completely, about packing a bag while Danny was at school, about driving away from the only home she had known, about the terror and relief of that choice. Marcus told her about his brother, about building a company together and thinking they were partners when really his brother had been waiting for the moment to seize control, about his wife who had married him for his money and left him when there was more money to be gained elsewhere, about his business partner who had falsified documents to make Marcus look guilty of fraud, clearing the way to take over everything they had built. How did you not see it? Sarah asked one night, her voice heavy with sleep medication. Were there no signs? There were signs. I just didn't want to see them. I wanted to believe in the people I loved. I wanted to believe that loyalty and honesty mattered, that if I was good to them, they would be good to me. Marcus stared at the ceiling, at the water stain that looked like a country he would never visit. I was naive. You weren't naive. You were trusting. There's a difference, is there? Because from where I'm sitting, they look the same. Naive means you don't know better. Trusting means you choose to believe in people, despite knowing they could hurt you. That's brave, not stupid. Marcus turned his head to look at her. In the dim light from the parking lot filtering through the curtains, Sarah looked younger, softer. Do you still trust people? After your husband? I trust some people, the ones who earn it, like you. She smiled slightly. You've had every opportunity to be a creep or take advantage. But you haven't. You've just been kind. That means something. I'm just doing what anyone would do. No, you're doing what good people do. There's a difference. They fell silent, listening to Danny's even breathing from the other bed. Outside, trucks rolled past on the highway, heading to destinations unknown. The world kept moving, indifferent to the small moments of grace happening in room 11 of the Moonlight Motor Inn. When you get to California, Marcus said quietly, what's the plan? Long term? Find a job. Find a place to live. Get Danny enrolled in school. Build something stable, normal, safe. Sarah paused. I just want him to have a childhood that isn't defined by chaos. Is that too much to ask? No, that's exactly the right amount to ask. What about you? What's your plan? Marcus had been avoiding that question, even in his own head. But lying here in the dark, with Sarah's quiet presence beside him and Danny sleeping nearby, the answer came easier than he expected. I need to go back, not to my old life, that's gone, but to the city, to deal with the legal stuff, to figure out what I actually have left. And then I need to decide what to build with it. That sounds hard. It will be. But I think I'm ready now. Or at least more ready than I was 2 weeks ago. What changed? Marcus thought about the blue dinosaur. About granola bars and cheap cereal and paper bags of food. About a child's simple kindness and a mother's fierce protection. And the way they had welcomed him into their lives without hesitation. I remembered what matters. People, connection, showing up. I'd forgotten that. I'd built a whole life around things that don't matter at all. So you're going to build a different kind of life? I'm going to try. Sarah reached out in the darkness and found his hand, squeezed it once. Good. The world needs more people who care about the right things. Marcus squeezed back, and they stayed like that for a long moment. Two broken people holding on to each other in the dark, finding strength in the most unlikely of friendships. And next morning, Marcus finally gave Sarah the list. He had refined it over the past few days, compiled websites and phone numbers, and contact information for organizations that could help. Gas assistance programs, food banks along her route, free legal aid for her divorce, job placement services in California. Everything she might need to make the transition easier. Sarah read through it slowly, her expression cycling through confusion, realization, and something that looked like anger. You've been researching this? I made some calls, asked some questions. I wanted to make sure you had options. Marcus, this is charity. No, this is information. What you do with it is your choice. But why make things harder than they have to be? These programs exist for exactly this reason. To help people who are trying to help themselves. Sarah set the list down, hands shaking slightly. I don't know how to accept this. You say thank you. And then you use what you need and ignore what you don't. That's all. Danny looked between them, sensing the tension. Mom, is this a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing, baby. Mr. Marcus is being very generous. Then why do you look sad? Sarah laughed, a wet sound that was half sob. I'm not sad. I'm just overwhelmed. Sometimes when people are really nice, it makes you cry. Happy crying. Danny seemed to accept this, though his expression suggested he thought adults were very confusing. Marcus felt the same way most of the time. That afternoon, they kept Marcus's promise and went for ice cream. Sarah was still weak, but determined to leave the room, and they drove to a small ice cream parlor Marcus had found during one of his supply runs. They sat at a picnic table outside, eating waffle cones in the afternoon sun, and for a few hours, they were just people, not a billionaire in hiding, not a family in crisis. Just people enjoying ice cream on a nice day. Danny got chocolate with sprinkles and ate it so fast he got a brain freeze. Sarah got vanilla, simple and perfect. Marcus got strawberry and realized he could not remember the last time he had eaten ice cream just because he wanted to. Not at some business lunch or charity event where dessert was a networking opportunity. This is the best day, Danny announced, chocolate smeared on his chin. Top 5. Maybe top 3? Top 3? Marcus asked, what are the other 2? The day my mom said we were going to California, and the day you became our friend. Danny said it with such simple sincerity that Marcus had to look away, blinking fast. Sarah put her hand on Marcus's shoulder, squeezed gently. Hey, you okay? Yeah, I'm good. I'm really good. And he was. For the first time in months, in years maybe, Marcus Hale was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. Not building empires, not accumulating wealth, just sitting at a picnic table with people he cared about, eating ice cream, being present, being human, being enough. On the 7th day of Sarah's recovery, Danny started having nightmares. Marcus woke to the sound of crying through the wall, Danny's voice high and scared, Sarah's voice soft and soothing. He lay in his bed, listening to her comfort her son, and remembered all the nights his own mother had done the same for him, before the money, before the empire, when they were just two people in a small apartment, doing their best. In the morning, Danny was quiet. He ate his breakfast without enthusiasm, pushing cereal around his bowl. Sarah watched him with worried eyes but didn't press. Marcus recognized the look. It was the same one he saw in the mirror lately, the weight of caring deeply and being helpless to fix everything. Bad dreams? Marcus asked gently when Sarah went to shower. Danny nodded, not looking up. About my dad. He was yelling, and my mom was crying, and I couldn't make it stop. I kept trying to tell him to be nice, but he couldn't hear me. Like I wasn't even there. Marcus moved to sit beside Danny on the bed. That sounds really scary. It felt real. Even though I know he's not here, even though I know we're safe, it felt like he could find us. Like he could make my mom go back. Danny's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't want to go back. You're not going back. Your mom made sure of that. She chose you, Danny. She chose your safety and your future over everything else. That's not something she's going to undo. But what if she gets too tired? What if she decides it's easier to just give up? Marcus felt like he had been punched, because Danny was not really asking about his mother anymore. He was asking about people in general, about whether anyone could be counted on to keep fighting when things got hard. And Marcus knew that question intimately, because he had been asking it himself for 2 weeks. Your mom isn't going to give up. I've watched her, Danny. She's the strongest person I've ever met. She's sick and exhausted, and dealing with more than any person should have to, and she keeps going. Every single day, she keeps going. You know why? Because of me? Because of you. And because she's determined to build a better life. Those two things together? That's unstoppable. Danny finally looked up, eyes red. Do you think I'm a burden? Be honest. Marcus took Danny's face in his hands, made sure the boy was looking directly at him. No, you are not a burden. You are a gift. You are the reason your mom finds strength. You are the light that keeps her moving forward. And anyone who made you feel like you were anything less than that was wrong. Do you understand? They were wrong. Tears spilled over, running down Danny's cheeks. My dad said I was expensive. He said I cost too much. He said if I wasn't there, they'd have money for things. Your dad was sick, Danny. And when people are sick like that, they say things that aren't true. They blame people who don't deserve blame. It wasn't about you. It was never about you. Then, why did he leave? Because he couldn't handle his own pain. And instead of getting help, he tried to push it onto other people, onto you and your mom. That's not your fault. That's his failure, not yours. Danny collapsed against Marcus, sobbing, and Marcus held him. This child who had been carrying guilt that was never his to carry. He thought about his own guilt, about wondering if he had been too trusting, too naive, if he had somehow caused his own betrayal. He thought about how easy it was to internalize other people's cruelty, to turn it inward and make it about your own inadequacy. Sarah emerged from the bathroom and stopped short when she saw them. Marcus met her eyes over Danny's head, saw her own eyes fill with tears. She came over and sat on Danny's other side, wrapping her arms around both of them. What happened? She asked softly. Just some truth-telling, Marcus said. Danny needed to hear that he's not responsible for his dad's choices. Sarah kissed the top of Danny's head. Oh, baby, I've told you that so many times. Why is it so hard to believe? Because I want to fix it, Danny said, his voice muffled against Marcus's chest. I want to make it so you're not sad, and we have money, and everything is easy. And I can't. I'm just a kid. You're not just anything, Sarah said firmly. You're my son. You're my whole world. And yes, things are hard right now, but they won't always be hard. And none of it, is your job to fix. That's my job. I'm the mom. I do the fixing. But what if you can't fix it all? Then we figure it out together. But you don't carry the weight alone. That's not how this works. Marcus listened to Sarah comfort her son and felt something shift inside himself. Because everything she was saying to Danny, she could be saying to him. He had been carrying weight alone for years, decades even. He had built an empire, but never let anyone help him hold it up. He had prided himself on being self-sufficient, on not needing anyone, and in the end, that isolation had left him completely vulnerable. When Danny finally calmed down, cried out, and exhausted, Sarah put him to bed for a nap, even though it was barely 10 in the morning. She and Marcus went out to the parking lot, sat on the curb by Marcus's car, and watched the highway in silence for a while. Thank you, Sarah said eventually, for what you said to him. He needed to hear it from someone who isn't me. He thinks I'm biased. You're his mother. Of course you're biased, but that doesn't make you wrong. I know. But sometimes hearing it from someone else makes it more real. She picked at a crack in the pavement. He's been having nightmares since we left. I thought they'd get better once we got further away, but they're getting worse. I don't know what to do. He's processing trauma. That takes time. And safety? You're giving him both of those things. Am I, though? Because right now, we're living in a motel. I'm sick. We're running out of money. And I have no idea if my sister's offer is still good, or if she's going to take one look at us and realize we're too much trouble. Marcus heard the spiral, recognized it, because he had been in the same one. The catastrophizing, the assuming the worst, the inability to see any path forward except failure. Sarah, stop. You're not thinking clearly. You're exhausted and sick and scared, but you're not seeing reality. You're seeing your fears. How do you know my fears aren't reality? Because I'm looking at the same situation, and I see something completely different. I see a woman who had the courage to leave an abusive situation, who has driven halfway across the country with a child and no support system, who got sick and kept going anyway, who raised a kid so kind and so thoughtful that he knocked on a stranger's door to offer comfort. That's not failure, Sarah. That's heroism. Sarah laughed bitterly. I don't feel like a hero. I feel like I'm drowning. I know that feeling. I've been drowning for 2 weeks. And you know what's kept me afloat? You and Danny. Your kindness. Your presence. The reminder that there are still good people in the world. We're just ordinary people trying to survive. No. You're extraordinary people who don't realize how extraordinary you are. Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him. Is that how you see us? It's how everyone should see you. She wiped at her eyes. How do you do that? How do you see the good stuff when everything feels terrible? Honestly, I didn't until you. I was ready to disappear, Sarah. I was ready to just stop existing. And then Danny knocked on my door with a plastic dinosaur, and suddenly I had a reason to stay present. You gave me that. We didn't do anything special. You saw me. When no one else did, when I was trying my hardest to be invisible, you saw me, and you cared. That's the most special thing there is. They sat in silence again, and Marcus realized something profound. He had been so focused on his own betrayal, on his own loss, that he had not recognized what he was gaining. Sarah and Danny had entered his life at his lowest point and shown him what actually mattered. Not business empires, not wealth, not prestige, connection, kindness, being there for someone when they needed you. I've been running away, Marcus said suddenly, from my life, from the mess, from the people who hurt me. I've been hiding here, pretending I could just not deal with any of it. But watching how you keep moving forward even when it's hard, even when you're scared, I realize I can't run forever. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to go back to the city, to face everything. Not to rebuild my old life, that's dead, but to figure out what's next. To deal with the legal stuff. To salvage what I can, and let go of what I can't. Sarah nodded slowly. When? Soon. Maybe in a few days. After you're well enough to continue your journey. Marcus turned to look at her. But I want to do something first. I want to make sure you and Danny get to California safely. That you have what you need. Gas money, food money, emergency funds. I want to help. Marcus, you've already helped so much. I know, but I want to help more. Because you've helped me more than you can possibly understand. You've reminded me who I want to be. And the person I want to be takes care of people who matter. You matter, Sarah. You and Danny. You matter to me. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. Why are you being so nice to us? Because you were nice to me first. And because I have the resources to help. And you need the help. And that's reason enough. Marcus paused. And because I'm starting to think that maybe the whole point of everything I built, all the money, all the success, maybe it was all leading to this, to being able to make a difference for someone when it really counts. That's a lot of pressure to put on us. No pressure, just gratitude. You're letting me be useful again. You're letting me matter. That's a gift. Sarah reached out and took his hand. You matter, Marcus. Money or no money. Success or no success. You matter because of who you are, not what you have. Marcus felt that truth land in his chest, felt it settle into a place that had been empty for so long. Who he was, not what he had. For his entire adult life, he had confused those two things, had believed his worth was tied to his accomplishments, his bank account, his reputation. And when all of that was taken away, he had believed he was nothing. But sitting here on this curb with Sarah, having helped with Danny, having spent these days being present and useful and kind, Marcus realized he had been wrong. He was not his achievements. He was not his losses. He was the person who showed up, the person who cared, the person who tried to make things better, even when his own life was falling apart. That was who he was. And that was enough. That night, after Sarah and Danny were asleep, Marcus sat in his room and finally, truly looked at his broken phone. He scrolled through the messages he had been ignoring. His lawyer had been busy. The fraud charges had been dismissed when the documents were proven to be forgeries. His business partner was now under investigation. His brother was facing a shareholder revolt. His wife's lawyer had overreached, and her settlement demands were being contested. The tide had turned. Not completely, not yet, but the truth was coming out. The lies were unraveling. And Marcus had options again. He could fight. He could reclaim pieces of what was his. He could rebuild. But did he want to? Marcus thought about the life he had left behind, the endless meetings, the constant pressure. The relationships based on utility and status. The isolation of being at the top, surrounded by people who wanted something from him, but never really saw him. Did he want to go back to that? Did he want to fight for that? Or did he want to build something different? Something that looked more like these past 2 weeks. Connected, human, real. He did not have the answer yet. But he knew he needed to go back to find it. He needed to face his old life, settle the accounts, close the chapters that needed closing. And then he needed to decide what to write next. The blue dinosaur sat on his nightstand, next to the picture Danny had drawn, his treasures, the things that actually mattered. Marcus picked up the dinosaur, held it in his palm, and made a promise to himself and to the boy who had given it to him. He was going to be better, not richer. Not more successful, better, kinder, more present, more human. He was going to take the lessons he had learned in room 12 of the Moonlight Motor Inn and carry them forward into whatever came next. He was going to remember that at his lowest point, when he had nothing, strangers had shown him kindness. And he was going to spend the rest of his life paying that forward, because that was the only legacy that mattered. On the 10th day, Sarah declared herself well enough to travel. Marcus argued with her, citing doctor's orders and common sense, but he could see the determination in her eyes. She had been still for too long. The room was closing in on her. She needed to move forward, even if she was not quite ready, because staying in one place felt too much like giving up. "We've imposed enough," she said, packing their few belongings into the worn backpack. "You've been incredibly generous, but we need to get back on the road. My sister is expecting us." Marcus wanted to argue more, to insist they stay until she was fully recovered, but he understood the impulse. Sometimes moving forward was the only thing that kept you from collapsing completely. He had been there himself just days ago. "Okay," he said, "but let me do something first, please." He made phone calls while Sarah and Danny were at breakfast. To a mechanic 2 towns over who owed him a favor from a decade ago. To a contact at a hotel chain who could provide discounted rooms. To his accountant, finally, requesting a cash transfer to an account he created solely for this purpose. When Sarah and Danny returned, Marcus had a plan. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, using the tone he had once used in boardrooms, the one that did not allow for argument. "You're going to drive to Joe's auto service in Bakersfield. I've already paid for a full inspection and any repairs your car needs. No arguments. Then you're going to stay tonight at a hotel with a pool, because Danny deserves a pool, and you need one more night of rest. I've arranged that too. Tomorrow, you'll drive the rest of the way to your sister's house, and you'll have this." He handed Sarah an envelope. Inside was $2,000 in cash, neatly bundled. Sarah stared at it like it was a snake. "Marcus, no. Absolutely not. This is too much. It's not nearly enough, but it's what I can do right now without making you uncomfortable. Consider it a loan, if that makes it easier. Pay me back when you're on your feet, or don't. I don't care. I just need to know you'll get to California safely." "Marcus, I can't accept this." "It's not right." Danny was looking between them, confused and worried. Marcus knelt down to the boy's level. "Danny, remember when you gave me the dinosaur? Remember how you said your grandma told you that when people are sad, you should give them something to hold on to?" Danny nodded. "Well, this is me giving your mom something to hold on to. It's just money, but it represents something more important. It represents belief. I believe in your mom. I believe in you. I believe you're going to get to California and build an amazing life. And I want to help make that happen. Can you help me explain that to her?" Danny turned to his mother with complete seriousness. "Mom, I think we should accept it. Mr. Marcus believes in us. And you always say that people believing in you is important. It gives you strength." Sarah looked at her son, at Marcus, and finally at the envelope in her shaking hands. "This is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for us." "Then you're long overdue for nice things." Marcus stood, put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Let people help you, Sarah. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart." She pulled him into a hug, sudden and fierce. Marcus hugged back, feeling her shake with silent tears. Over her shoulder, he saw Danny watching with a small smile, pleased that the adults were finally figuring things out. When Sarah pulled away, she wiped her face and laughed shakily. Okay, we'll accept it. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you properly, but thank you. You already did. You saved my life. This is just me returning the favor." They spent the next hour organizing their departure. Marcus walked through their car with them, checked the tires, the fluids, made sure everything was as ready as it could be. He programmed the mechanic's address into Sarah's phone, and the hotel, then added his own number. Call me when you get there. When you get to your sister's. Hello, call me if you need anything ever. I mean that. You might regret saying that, Sarah said with a small smile. Danny's going to want to call you constantly. Good. I want him to. Danny was uncharacteristically quiet, standing by the car, holding his backpack. When it was time to actually leave, he looked up at Marcus with eyes that were trying very hard not to cry. Do we have to go? Yeah, buddy. You do. California's waiting. Your aunt and your cousin and Sonny the dog. Remember? I know. But I don't want to leave you. You're my friend. Marcus felt his throat close up. He knelt down one more time, eye level with this child who had changed his entire world. I'm always going to be your friend. Distance doesn't change that. And we'll talk on the phone. And who knows? Maybe I'll come visit California sometime. See how you're doing. Really? You promise? I promise. Danny threw his arms around Marcus's neck, held on tight. Thank you for being nice to us. Thank you for helping my mom. Thank you for being you. Marcus hugged him back, memorizing the moment. This small, warm body, this pure heart. Thank you for knocking on my door. Thank you for the dinosaur. Thank you for reminding me what matters. When Danny finally let go and climbed into the car, Marcus stood and faced Sarah one last time. She looked stronger than she had in days. Color in her cheeks. Determination in her spine. She was going to make it. He knew that now with absolute certainty. You're going to do great things, Marcus told her. You and Danny both. I can feel it. So are you. Whatever you decide to do next, wherever you go, you're going to be amazing. Because you're a good man, Marcus Hale. Don't let anyone tell you different. She hugged him once more, brief and tight, and got in the car. Marcus stood in the parking lot of the Moonlight Motor Inn and watched them drive away, Danny's hand waving from the back window until they turned onto the highway and disappeared. The silence that followed was profound. Marcus stood there for a long time, feeling the weight and lightness of goodbye. Then he turned and looked at room 12, at this place that had been his hiding spot, his prison, his salvation. It was time. He checked out that afternoon, paid the old man at the desk, who nodded knowingly, like he had seen this story play out 100 times. People came to the Moonlight Motor Inn broken and left changed. It was that kind of place. Marcus threw his small bag into his car, looked one last time at the peeling paint and flickering neon sign, and then he drove, not away, toward, back to the city, back to the mess, back to his life. The drive took 6 hours. Marcus listened to music, to podcasts, to nothing, just the sound of the road under his tires. He thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the collapse, the hiding, the finding, Sarah and Danny, the lessons they had taught him without meaning to, the way they had pulled him out of his spiral, simply by being themselves, by showing him kindness when he was at his lowest. He thought about who he had been 3 weeks ago, successful, powerful, alone, so profoundly alone, and not even realizing it, building walls and calling them achievements, surrounding himself with people who saw him as a resource, not a human being. And he thought about who he was now, stripped of pretense, humbled, but also more himself than he had been in decades. The version of him that had existed before the money, before the empire, before he had confused wealth with worth. That young man who had stood in a grocery store, watching his mother put food back, and promised himself he would do better, be better. He had achieved the first part, the doing better, the financial success. But he had lost sight of the second part, the being better, the staying human, the remembering what actually mattered. It was time to fix that. When Marcus pulled into the city as the sun was setting, painting the buildings in gold and red, he did not go to his penthouse. that felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Instead, he checked into a modest hotel, nothing fancy, and sat on the bed with his broken phone. He called his lawyer first. They talked for an hour, going through everything. The investigation into his business partner was progressing. The fraud was evident. Marcus would likely get much of his company back if he wanted it. His brother's reputation was destroyed. The other board members had already begun distancing themselves. His wife's settlement was being revised down significantly. Her lawyer's overreach had backfired spectacularly. You could have everything back, his lawyer said. Maybe not exactly as it was, but close. You could rebuild the empire. What if I don't want to? Marcus heard himself say. Silence on the other end. Then carefully, what do you mean? I mean, what if I don't want the empire? What if I want something different? Like what? Marcus thought about Danny's smile, about Sarah's fierce determination, about sitting on the curb eating ice cream, about conversations through motel walls, about plastic dinosaurs and hand-drawn pictures. Something that matters, something real. His lawyer was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, are you okay? You sound different. I am different. And yeah, I'm okay. Maybe more okay than I've been in years. They agreed to talk more tomorrow, to make plans, to figure out the legal path forward. But Marcus had already made his real decision. He was not going back to his old life. That life had been built on sand, and it had crumbled the moment it was tested. He was going to build something new, something with foundations that could not be shaken. The next morning, Marcus began making calls to nonprofits he had donated to in the past, to community organizations, to people he had met over the years who were doing actual good in the world, not just talking about it at charity galas. He asked questions. What was needed? Where were the gaps? How could someone with resources actually make a difference? The answers were overwhelming and clarifying. There were so many needs, so many ways to help, and Marcus had spent years writing checks and attending events, but never actually doing anything, never getting his hands dirty, never being present. That was about to change. Over the next week, Marcus assembled a team, not a corporate team, a real team. Social workers, community organizers, people who had spent their lives in the trenches, helping families like Sarah's, kids like Danny. He told them his story, the real one, about hiding in a motel and being saved by strangers, about learning what actually mattered, about wanting to do something meaningful with whatever resources he managed to salvage from the wreckage of his old life. They were skeptical at first. Rich guys wanting to help was nothing new. Rich guys actually following through was rare. But Marcus showed up every day, asked questions, listened, learned, and slowly they began to believe he was serious. What do you want to call it? One of the organizers asked during a planning meeting. The foundation, the initiative, whatever this becomes. Marcus thought about a plastic dinosaur, about a child's simple wisdom, about being seen when he thought he was invisible. Second chances. We'll call it second chances, because everyone deserves one, including me. They built it slowly, carefully. Not a top-down charity where rich people decided what poor people needed, but a collaborative effort, listening to communities, responding to actual needs. Housing assistance for families in transition, mental health support, job training, legal aid, all the things Sarah had needed, all the things that had been available if you knew where to look, but impossible to find if you were drowning. Marcus used his connections, his remaining wealth, his business acumen, but he also used himself. He showed up. He met families. He heard stories. He sat with people in crisis and offered not just money, but presence, time, attention, the things he had been too busy to give before. And he called Sarah and Danny every week, sometimes more. Danny would tell him about school, about making friends, about his cousin teaching him to skateboard. Sarah would tell him about her job at a local library, about the apartment they had found, about slowly building stability. And Marcus would tell them about second chances, about the families they were helping, about how everything he was doing was because of them. "You're giving us too much credit," Sarah said during one call, 6 months after they had left the motel. "I'm giving you exactly the right amount of credit. You saved my life. This is just me trying to do the same for others. Well, Danny wants to come visit you. He misses his friend. Tell him to get on a plane. I'll pay for the tickets. Both of you. Come see what you started." They came in December, almost a year after Marcus had checked into the Moonlight Motor Inn. Danny was taller, more confident, with braces on his teeth and a skateboard under his arm. Sarah looked rested, healthy, like a weight had been lifted. They stayed for a week, and Marcus showed them everything. The office for second chances, the families they had helped, the programs they had started, the lives they were changing. "This is because of us?" Danny asked, looking at photos of families on the wall, success stories, people who had been where Sarah and Danny had been and were now stable, thriving. "This is because you reminded me what matters. You knocked on my door when I needed it most. Now I'm trying to knock on doors for other people." On their last night, they went to dinner at a nice restaurant. Nothing too fancy, but nice enough to feel special. Danny wore his one-collared shirt and talked non-stop about his life in California. Sarah smiled more than Marcus had ever seen her smile. And Marcus realized something profound. He was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. Not because he had rebuilt his empire. Not because he had gotten revenge on the people who hurt him. But because he was doing work that mattered with people he cared about. Because he had found purpose in service instead of accumulation. Because a child had given him a plastic dinosaur and changed the entire trajectory of his life. "I have something for you," Danny said as dessert arrived. He pulled out a small wrapped package, handed it to Marcus with ceremony. Marcus unwrapped it carefully. Inside was another plastic dinosaur. This one was green, slightly bigger than the blue one, with its arms raised like it was celebrating. "It's the blue one's friend," Danny explained, "so he's not lonely anymore. My mom says everyone needs friends, even dinosaurs." Marcus held the green dinosaur, felt his eyes burn with tears. He did not try to hide. "It's perfect. Thank you, Danny." "You're welcome. And Mr. Marcus, I'm really glad you didn't stay disappeared. I'm really glad you came back." "Me too, buddy. Me too." That night, back in his modest apartment, Marcus placed the green dinosaur next to the blue one on his dresser. He had moved out of his penthouse, sold most of his possessions, simplified his life down to what he actually needed. The dinosaurs were among his most prized possessions, along with the drawing Danny had made, along with photos from that week at the motel. Evidence of the moment everything changed. He thought about his brother, his wife, his business partner, the people who had betrayed him. He had not spoken to any of them since that day. The legal proceedings had moved forward without him. Settlements reached, consequences delivered. He could have destroyed them if he wanted to, could have used his resources and connections to make sure they never worked again. But he had chosen differently. He had chosen to let it go, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because he deserved peace. Carrying that anger, that need for revenge, would have poisoned everything he was trying to build. So he had let them fade into the rearview mirror and focused on the road ahead. A road that was brighter than anything he had imagined. Sitting in room 12 of the Moonlight Motor Inn, broken and alone, thinking his life was over. His life was not over. It was just beginning. The real part. The part that mattered. And it had all started with a knock on the door. A plastic dinosaur. A child's simple kindness. Marcus picked up his phone and scrolled to a photo from their dinner. Sarah and Danny smiling, him beside them looking happier than he could remember being in his entire adult life. He set it as his lock screen, a reminder of what he was working for and why. Then he pulled out his laptop and started writing emails to people he wanted to help, to organizations he wanted to support, to families who needed a second chance the same way he had needed one. Because that was the thing about hitting bottom, about losing everything, about being saved by unexpected kindness. It taught you what mattered. It stripped away all the pretense and left you with the truth. And the truth was simple. We were here to take care of each other, to show up, to knock on doors when people were suffering, to offer plastic dinosaurs and granola bars and presents, to believe in people when they could not believe in themselves, to give second chances because we had received them. Marcus had been given a second chance by a woman and her son who had nothing and gave everything. Now he was going to spend the rest of his life paying that forward, not because he had to, but because he wanted to, because it was the only thing that made sense anymore. He opened a new document and started typing, drafting plans for a new initiative. Emergency motel funds for families in crisis. A network of support across the country. Places where people could land when they were falling, find help when they were lost. He was going to call it the Moonlight Project, because sometimes the darkest places were where you found the most light. And sometimes the people you met in cheap motels with flickering neon signs were the ones who saved your life. Marcus typed until dawn, energized, purposeful, alive. Outside his window, the city woke up. People started their days, facing struggles and joys he could only imagine. And somewhere in California, a boy was sleeping with a stuffed dog and a skateboard and dreams of the future. A boy who had knocked on a door and changed the world.